Welcome. In this video, we will discuss about the participation of women in the Indian freedom movement. So we very recently have already made a video about the Azad Hind government, which was in news because the 77th anniversary was observed very recently. And here in this particular video, we will discuss about the Rani Lakshmi Bai regiment, which was a part of the INA. But apart from that, we will also go into the details of other women who came at the forefront during the freedom struggle. So this is the major agenda for this video. Let's begin. So the first thing that we need to know is it's not that the women started to participate in the freedom struggle at the later stage only. In fact, in 1857 itself, Rani Lakshmi Bai, the Queen of Jhansi, led a rebellion against the British. And if you have been like in your textbook also, you must have heard about that poem that खूब लड़ी मर्दानी वो तो झांसी वाली रानी थी. So such was the valor and such was the struggle through which Rani Lakshmi Bai also came at the forefront in the battlefield. And she was not the only example. In fact, throughout the freedom struggle, we see many women who come at the forefront and who have shown many courageous acts which has like made the Britishers even to think that even the women in the country of India are coming in forward for the freedom struggle. So a watershed movement for women's participation in the revolt and resistance was the Swadeshi movement in the 1900s. So 1905, which caused the partition of Bengal, led to the Swadeshi movement, which was led by the extremists mainly in the Indian National Congress, who were of the belief that there has to be a nationwide boycott of the foreign goods. So that was the Swadeshi movement, so that like the native things are being propagated over there, and that is the movement which is considered as the watershed movement, where the women started to come at the forefront of the struggle. Before that, under the moderates ideology, it was more restricted towards some of the people, but extremists idea of mass movement attracted women also into the freedom struggle. So this is the major watershed movement you can call in the India's freedom for struggle for the women's participation. It made possible because the movement did not context women femininity or their traditional role in society at a time when most women were still restricted to janana or were behind the ghungat. So this was the background in which those women was coming forward. So unlike today, when women have almost equal rights as par with men, that times the times were different. They were asked to be at home and live more feminine life, and to there were gender specific role. Things have still not changed too much, but we are still in a better world where women are kind of very much involved in the workforce. But during those time, during the early 90s, it was not the early 1900, it was not the case. And such a movement, when the Swadeshi movement came into picture and when women started participating in the movement, it kind of changed the course of the whole movement. So that is something you have to remember, like which is the starting point which kind of trigger more participation for women. Then the Gandhi's call to Satyagrah, more women broke social constraint to get actively involved in the struggle against the British Raj. So Gandhiji was also very much in favor of asking the women to come out of their home and participate in this freedom struggle, though he has some conservative views regarding what kind of role the women would play, and he was more leaning towards the feminine side, but still the whole idea that the women should be a part of freedom struggle was very much intrinsic to the Gandhi's ideologies also. Women participation can also be witnessed during the 1940s in the Quit India movement. In fact, here you see the revolutionary phase of the women coming forward. So this is the major background in which we have to understand that women participation was not one time thing, but it has been like women have already always backed the freedom struggle. So let's try to understand, or let's try to know few of the important freedom fighters. So this is not a comprehensive list by any regard. We have many more women freedom fighters who made remarkable embark over the overall struggle for India's freedom. But let's quickly go through few which is like very important for you to know. Sarojini Naidu became the first Indian woman to preside over the INC session in 1925. So in 1925, Indian National Congress had a session in Kanpur, and it was the first time an Indian woman was presiding over it. Now remember the term that it was the first Indian woman. Annie Besant has already presided over an INC session. So if the question is that Sarojini Naidu was the first woman to preside over the INC session, then it would be wrong. So you have to remember that they are talking this specifically the first Indian women. She also participated in the Dharshana Salt Satyagraha. So during the time of civil disobedience movement, the Dandi March, there were packets of salt satyagraha going around the country, and Sarojini Naidu was one of the active participants during the Salt Satyagraha. So you have to remember that particular point. Now there is another famous woman who has been associated with the freedom struggle for India. Though not Indian, she has contributed a lot to the freedom struggle. So Annie Besant led the Home Rule movement in 1916, and in fact there were two Home Rule. One was led by Tilak and one was led by Annie Besant. The idea behind Home Rule movement was kind of inspired from the Italy movement, where it's like the people who are residing over there will get some right to rule. So this was the idea, and this was the one of the major movement which was kind of helped even Gandhiji when he started his non-cooperation movement. Again in 1930, Bengali freedom fighter Surya Sen had led a raid against the Chittagong Armory. So 1930 Chittagong Armory raid case is very famous in the circle when you are reading about the revolutionary activity. So it was again, apart from the Kakari case, the Lahore conspiracy case, the Chittagong Armory raid is also one of the major event for the revolutionaries who were trying to gain independence for India. So Surya Sen was one among them, and he was active in the region of Bengal. But he was not the only one, and in fact he was supported by great and very courageous women by the name of Kriti Lata Wadekar and Kalpana Datta. So he was supported by such courageous women who were like having his back, and who participated actively in the Chittagong Armory raid. So this is again something you need to remember. Then we have Sucheta Kriplani, Aruna Asif Ali, Usha Datta. These are the few women. So it's not like these are the only women. There were lot and lots of women who got really active during the time of Quit India movement. But Sucheta Kriplani, Aruna Asif Ali, Usha Datta, they were like very active during the Quit India movement. So when the Gandhiji announced the do and die slogan from the Gwalior tank in Bombay, and after that it was followed by the Quit India movement, and then subsequent arrest of all the major leaders of Indian Congress. Then at that time it was the women who actually came forward, and in fact if you remember, Usha Datta is one of the person who led the underground radio system. So the communication channels were held through that. Sucheta Kriplani, Aruna Asif Ali also played a very important role in maintaining the momentum for the Quit India movement. So this is something, this is the power of the women which was felt over there. So these are the few women that you need to know. Again, just a reminder, this is not an exhaustive list. You have to go back, check in your Spectrum Modern History book. You will be able to find out that there are much more women personalities over there who have like really kind of became the pioneer in case of freedom struggle. So finally, now let's also try to understand the Rani of Jhansi regiment, which was part of the INA. So it was INA which was led by Netaji Subhash Chandra Bose, and within it there was a Rani of Jhansi regiment which was an all-women infantry combat unit. Now you have to understand that Rani of Jhansi regiment was all combat infantry units. The infantry is like the people who like go on walk, and it is an all-women infantry combat unit. It was formed in 1943 and was among the first of its kind anywhere in the world. So if you actually look at the idea of providing combat role to the women, it was really very ahead of its time. So it was one of its kind at the time when it was formed. Indian women in British colonies across the world were roused into action and grabbed the chance to serve their country on equal terms, something long denied to them. So, this is also something very intrinsic, that it wasn't the case that women were not ready to participate in the freedom struggle, but more so often that they were not allowed. So, this particular regiment provided them a chance to show that they are at equal par with the men and they could also fight for the freedom of India. Under the command of Captain Lakshmi Sehgal, now remember this term, Captain Lakshmi Sehgal, the Rani of Jhansi regiment became an important and integral part of INA despite the skepticism of many, including the Japanese, who had provided crucial assistance on Bose's fight against the British Raj. So you have to remember that when this combat unit was formed, the times were really different. The idea of having an all combat women unit was very new to even the Japanese, who were skeptical that would they be able to perform during the combat fights. So that was, but on like contrary or proving them wrong, the Rani of Jhansi regiment became an integral part of Indian National Army. One important aspect of Rani of Jhansi regiment was its diversity. The regiment attracted women of all ages and from different educational and economic backgrounds. So there was no much discrimination, there was no much criteria that only the women of middle class have participated or the intelligentsia, the women who were from higher class didn't participate, or the caste discrimination. So it was not the case. In fact, women from all ages, from all different kind of economic and education background came together, formed this regiment, and this regiment was very instrumental for the Indian National Army. So this is something that you need to know. Again, UPSC had been asking question about women participation in freedom struggle. So this is an important topic from your mains point of view also. If you go back and check the previous year paper, you will find that there have been question about their participation in the freedom struggle during like different phases, like what were their contribution during Gandhi phase, during the moderate phase, and so on. So this topic is important and I hope you have understood this video. If you have any doubt, feel free to drop a comment. Thank you.